Okay, so here we go. Let me grab my questions.
So we're going to start with doohickey, right?
No, I think we kind of solved that one. The group video thing is about the Army case.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Yeah, the doohickey one is just turning in that 8 to 10 page report.
Yeah, but I thought we were supposed to discuss those ideas, but are we going to do the Google Doc then and then discuss them later?
Yeah, I think we should do that.
Okay, perfect. I'm on page now.
Okay. So, the part one question is, why did the varsity team lose to the JV team? Did the varsity members engage in too much conflict?
Sorry, is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry, I had an emergency tonight. I won't be making it. That's Taylor or Tyler.
Okay. Sounds good.
Do that, yeah.
At least we know.
So basically, the varsity team, the difference between both of them was that the varsity team didn't have. Let me start all over again. The JV team had more of a unity for that, like as a team.
Did the varsity members engage in too much conflict?
I feel like they did, just because it said on the case that the coach had to talk to them and tell them, if you have any criticism, please come to me, not to the certain individual. And I think they did had a lot of conflict, just because he had to say that. He mentioned it on the case. He also mentioned that once he started doing that, once he started tell me conflictors, he started receiving emails of, I feel like this person is doing so and so. I feel like it was more of like I instead of like we. So I feel like they did have a lot more conflict than the JV team.
Yeah, and they were, from the little that I read, that they were kind of working more as individuals than working as a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like I did all the work, and somebody will always say, well, I did all the work too, like, so.
Is there an appropriate place for conflict among the members of the varsity crew or among the members of the team?
Sorry, you cut out.
Is there an appropriate place for conflict among the members of the varsity crew or among the members of any team?
Is that like saying like an appropriate time or an appropriate? I don't.
Yeah, I think this question's kind of, is it okay to have conflict? And I think there is. I think there's going to be conflict in anything, especially when you get a group of 8 people together. You're going to have conflict. But I think this question is more leaning to the appropriate places outside of being in the shell of the boat. That when they're in the shell of the boat and they're on the water, that they need to be one heart, one mind, one team.
Mm-hmm.
That's how any group should be. I mean, there's always going to be conflict. It's human nature for us to disagree about things or think that, you're doing more or less. It just happens. But there's always an appropriate place to handle it and an appropriate way to handle it where you're not going to offend people as much as you possibly could. I mean, whether they get offended or not is up to them. But
and that just reminded me of like, something that I learned is that when there is conflict, you don't say I feel. We say we. We try to make it like. Wait, where's it backwards? Crap, I forgot. Anyways, you don't try. No, this is the. You don't try to like make like it was or somebody else's fault. You try to, since it's a team, it's supposed to be like, oh.
Yeah. Like not trying to direct it directly at one person.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's just going to cause even more conflicts between those two people.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's something that the coach could have told them, like if you, or maybe like individually, or maybe as a group, like when you guys are trying to resolve a conflict or have an issue, don't try to point out who it is. Just say it broadly.
Broadly.
Yeah. Just because the JV team, that's what they did. They didn't point out. They just generalized it for everybody, which made them more united.
Okay. What role did trust play in the problems varsity crew faced? I think it's kind of the same thing with the conflict. Because they were pointing fingers, the problems just grew, and so the trust was lost.
Can you tell me where those questions are?
Yes, this is just for the group leader, the discussion leader. It says lesson 3, discussion prep, discussion leader only.
Okay.
Cool. So let me look at that question.
So what do you guys think? What role did trust play in the problems the varsity crew faced?
Well, if they're trusting each other, they're going to be able to not worry about what the other person's doing. They can just trust them to make sure that they're rowing on pace or what have you, and they're not going to get off their balance or whatever themselves because they're worrying about someone else. They can just worry about what they're doing because they trust that person.
Yeah.
Is trusting other rowers necessary for the crew's team success?
Definitely, like Lucy said, like if they don't trust the other person is gonna do their job, then they're gonna be, like she said, they're gonna be worried about the other.
Yeah, like when your group member forgets to read what you're supposed to read.
Yeah,
it won't happen again.
It talked about in the beginning of the article about how the rowing works. And it talks about how when the 8 people are in the boat, that their arms are at the exact same level and the oars placed in the water are at the exact same place. They're literally breathing together, the whole 9 yards, working together.
Yeah.
So even if they were saying that even if someone just moves their head slightly to get the hair out of their face, that it will mess that groove up. And then the other members have to continue at the pace they're doing in hopes that crew member will get back on track.
Yeah.
If they try to do something different, then they will all then be out of track instead of just the one person.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Is trust in the team the same as trust in individual team members?
I think that goes to the conflict part again, because like, for example, if you have a conflict with somebody in the team, then will you trust that person? So that's when it comes like individual, then that's, I don't know. Like as a team, yeah, that person might be good, but as individually, then there might be conflict. If that makes any sense of what I just said.
Oh yeah, it does. I feel like with most other sports, you can have trust in a team and still have a problem with one person. Like I used to play soccer, and I could have trusted my team to win, even if I had conflict with one player who's playing forward. You just avoid passing to that person, or you just avoid utilizing that person. But when it comes to like crew, they have to be so in sync in order to really beat out their competition that, like in an instance like this, if you don't trust one of your team members that they're going to pick up, like you said, if they move their hair, if you can't trust them to pick back up with the rest of the team, then you really aren't trusting the team as a whole.
Yeah. And also you have to like, we have to like think about how sometimes, for example, if somebody messes up, we tend to like don't trust that person. I like just there's always like that are you gonna do this again, or are you not gonna do this again? Like, so that's where the trust also like comes in.
Makes sense. I think it's one of those things that I think you hear teammates talk about often, where whatever issue you have with the player, you have to leave it off the field or off the court. You can be a team on the court or on the field, wherever the case may be. I think it's kind of one of those things that you have to trust them individually because you are a team. That doesn't mean once you're off the court or off the field or off the water, in this case, that you still can't have conflict and disagree.
Yeah. And I think that's what the varsity team like has so much problem with trusting each other, because they thought about themselves a lot. Because they thought about themselves, they thought that they were the best, and because they were the best, then their team wasn't doing their best. So they didn't trust each other because they thought nobody was doing the best. I mean.
Yep. Okay. What happens to team trust if you replace one member of the team?
I feel like you end up starting back at like ground zero, because like you said, like you have to trust the whole team. And when that one person comes in, they can throw the whole thing off. They can throw the whole dynamic off, at least socially. Maybe they can stay in rhythm and sync for the crew, but with you not necessarily knowing them, it's hard to trust them. And so it would, in my opinion, like the teams that I was on, when we had spaghetti dinners together or we had different things where we got to know each other, we played better together. We did better. And so if you replace that one member, it could throw it all off, or it could make it all better, because maybe the one member that's being replaced is one that you weren't getting along with or you didn't trust in the first
place. Yeah. That kind of like, I think that's something that they also lacked, because I don't think they talked throughout the case. I don't think they talked about building relationship with members. And I think that might have helped the varsity team get along better. Because it's an army, so it's military. And in the military, you're just like, they don't care, about your relationship with others. They just want you to do and do and do and do and do. So some of them don't even have that relationship with each other. So maybe that's something that they could work. The coach could work to get the team to get along.
Well, it really surprises me, because the military, when they go into combat, they have to trust their guys that are around them. They have to trust that they're going to have their back, and so while adding a new member to the team, I think you can still trust that individual to do their job. I don't know, maybe not a full and complete trust until you've practiced with them and worked with them and know that, they're going to be in sync with the rest of the team. But I don't know, that one's a little hard.
No, but you're right. Like I did ROTC for a couple semesters, but you're right. You have your battle buddies, and that person you have to trust them, even if you don't really know them, that they're going to have your back no matter what you're going into. And a lot of times you build that trust through like the different trainings that they put you through and the different experiences that you have. And so, having a member replaced maybe at first might be hard, but once you go through practices and trainings and, being yelled at by your sergeant or your coach or what have you, that's when you build that trust even more.
What happened toward the end of the case when the coach switched varsity individuals with JV individuals, and what did this prove? So what do you think?
Well, at the end, it worked for a little while, and he was surprised because he's like, "Oh, okay, this is actually working." Like I chose a good team, but then towards the end, it started talking about how he started having leadership issues, like they needed to be trained on leadership and they needed to learn to work together. So they still had the same problem of trusting each other and working as a team, even if they changed the individuals.
And to be honest, I would think that, trading out half your team before you go into the finals is going to shake up any team. I think it would be difficult to, because you haven't worked with them as long as you have the other guys. And I'm sure that would throw off anything. I think, when you're coaching any team, regardless of sport, that it's that constant interaction with the same team members to learn how they work and how they flow and how they pass the ball or field the ball to you or whatever the case may be. That once you learn that individual, then you become a more cohesive team. I would think that it would be hard to have split teams and swapped them up, and I think the JV guys now on the varsity team could easily have gotten a little cocky, like, "Oh, you guys need us," and then the varsity guys maybe even resent the JV guys now that they're on the team.
Well, at the end, they started to get mad at the JV team because they were winning so many, like they were winning against them. So they were like, "Why are they winning? Like we're supposed to be better." So they started basically getting jealous because they were better than them. But it was because they were a team that they were winning. They weren't separate individuals.
Okay, how did the rivalry between the two boats influence varsity's performance? You just kind of said that, the varsity team was resenting JV for continuing to win. And so, of course, I'm sure that just aggravated varsity even more and just made them continue to perform worse.
They here. Have you guys? Did you guys read the last part? Oh my gosh.
I was just reading it.
I mean, there's some he received some emails from the varsity team. I just want to read to you guys because it's kind of sorry. Okay, so one of them. Okay, maybe I can't find it. Okay, here's one. It says, "I never thought I would be the weak link, but on this race, I am sure of it. I know if I get my head back in it, to the ball will start to move again." And this is another one. This is not my something. He says something session about Jim, since I haven't gotten a chance to talk with you besides his great personality. He is not consistent at all, and I don't know if you can tell. So they were basically telling him like the job of the coach, some of the members of the team. It's like, I really need someone that I feel a bond with, and it isn't happening with Jim, somebody else, someone in the team. At points, I have almost asked you to move me to any boat, but the one that he is in. I know and try to remember the story that you always tell about the guy that whatever. Anyway, so it just, I don't know, like in that one you can tell like they were kind of like, I don't know, like the varsity team wasn't just.
It
They
sounded
were
like they kind of just given up and were just willing to point fingers that it was everybody's fault.
exactly, yeah.
But
So
they're
they blame the varsity team. I mean the JV team. They blame it on each other except for themselves. So
okay. Is fostering competition between teams within an organization harmful to the organization?
I think it depends on how you do it. Because if at the end, like, yes, you compete against each other, but at the end you're like, okay, now let's hug it, or like you do some kind of activity that makes them united, then I feel like that's fine.
Yeah, I feel like if you're fostering a competition, but ultimately the end goal is all the same within that organization, like, you're all trying to hit this many sales. Well, which team is going to get the most sales to help us reach that goal? Then you're all going for the same goal, but that competition helps you kind of foster motivation to, okay, well, I want to beat that team for whatever incentive, but they're all still working towards the same goal. So it really isn't like one against one.
Hello.
Hello, Isioma. They don't have the camera or the microphone, so we're going to have to watch the group chat to see what Isioma says.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us in the middle of the night. We're talking about the Army case, and I'm asking questions, and we're all kind of discussing it, so feel free to jump in from time to time and something at us, and I'll read it for you, okay? Okay, so how did varsity problems evolve over time, and is there a key point when their downward spiral started?
I think the more they competed against each other, against each team, it was when everything just kind of like just went downhill. But
I don't know, from everything that we've kind of talked about so far, it sounds to me like it really started to spiral down when they started looking for somewhere to place the blame, almost. Like the minute that they started looking for this problem, but they refused to look at themselves, is when all the problems started, because then they started blaming this person and that person, and then it just spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah.
Isioma says everything started downhill when they started bickering amongst each other. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Should the coach have stepped in to provide better leadership himself, or should he have encouraged one of the team members to provide leadership? I think he should have jumped in. I think he should have talked to him and said, whatever issues you guys have, keep it off the water. But once we're in the water, be a team, and you guys have to work together. The point is to be a team and to win the race. And you can't do that while you've got the conflict.
And the thing is that as a coach, like he tried everything.
Why do you think it kind of depends, Isioma? What were you saying, Sol?
Oh, as a coach, like I think he tried his best. I mean, he was trying to look for solutions. Like at one point he thought, maybe I could use my degree to help them, because I think he studied like psychology or something like that. And like he had like a bunch of stuff with leadership. And then he also brought somebody else to help him that had also a way, had education that helped them be better leaders or something like that. But he also at the end, which I think this is something that he did wrong, he kind of like, he was tired of hearing all these things and trying to solve the problem, that at the end he was like, he gathered them all together and say, we're not gonna get out of here until we fix this. And that's when everybody just like went off and like it just got worse. And I think he could have handled that better. Maybe he could have just done a one by one, and then maybe like if one had a problem with somebody else, maybe put them both together and like talk about it, all three of them. I don't know.
Yeah. Isioma says, I think it kind of depends. He could have found out the root cause of the issue. He went off hunting for a solution to a problem he didn't really take the time to understand. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the question asks if he should have encouraged one team member to provide leadership. Because in my head, I just go to like all these movies, like Remember the Titans, where there's like team captains that have to bring these teams together that are, fighting or that have these conflicts with one another. And I think that would have been an interesting approach for him to take, just because it really needed to start the solution or the resolution to come together really needed to start from within. And if he would have had like one person that wasn't a superior coach come in and say, listen, guys, we're not going to win this. We're not going to be better than them if we don't get our act together. Like you said, we can leave all our issues off the water, but when we get in this boat, we need to be one. And it would have probably influenced how everyone else looked at the problem. It would have influenced how they went about it, because it wasn't coming down from leadership. It was coming from within.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, part 2. We kind of talked about this also. What should the coach have done differently? What should Coach P have done differently earlier in the season to resolve the problem? And I think I talked about that where, you said that hand it off to a leader of the team, or just, even sat down with the group and tried to figure out what the initial problem is and try to resolve it from there.
Yeah, it's like I assume, I said, like if he would have figured out, the root first, he would, he could have picked a leader from the group and like handle it better.
Yeah, if he had taken the time to understand the root cause, he would have been able to make a better determination of whether he should let the guys handle their own issue.
Yeah.
Or from that point, picked a leader to then sit down with the rest of the group and make them work it out.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you think he should have intervened? Be specific about how you think intervention would have helped the team. I think you should have done it early on. You don't wait until the end of finals week to bring up issues and try to solve things. Maybe during winter when they were training and things, that you try to resolve issues in the off season sort of before you hit the water, or even the initial thought once he realized that there was conflict, address it early so it doesn't have time to.
Yeah, or maybe when he noticed difference between both teams, like he should have realized, okay, this is what's going on. Let me just get to it. But
yeah. Okay. Explain exactly what you think he should have done, which I talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says,
At first, when I first was reading the case, I was like, oh, because he talked about like the teams weren't fast enough. They were getting slow, and some of the JV team was better than like the varsity team. So I was like, why doesn't he just, at the day of the competition, he figures out which ones are the best and put them together. But which it could work if they all work as a team, like varsity team and JV team, like our friends, they're united, also has a team, because they are all a team if you think about it. They're not just the varsity team and the JV team. They should be all working together because they're all in the same team technically. So, but then as it went on, I was like, well, as we talked about it, I was like, well, they couldn't do that because if you were to change the dynamic of the team, change an individual, then that will mess everything up again.
Yeah, I think if he had been changing the dynamic all along, if he had, moved 2 people off of this team and put them on this team and flip-flop individuals, if he had done that routinely,
yeah,
I think it would have been that difficult for him to do it that final week of season. But to just kind of do it nonchalantly of just because I want to win, I'm going to put the best team players on the team. That throws off the team.
Mm-hmm.
So what should the coach do now? What do you think Coach P should do on Tuesday and why?
Well, it ended with the team being mad at each other with that huge meeting all together, and they just being crabby mad at each other. And then he just said, on Tuesday, we're just come here to fix this. So, I mean, it ended up with a pretty bad, I don't know.
Okay, so it's race day. What does he do?
I personally, I wouldn't even compete just because they're not a team. They probably wouldn't win anyways because they're not united. Because their problems are not resolved because of what?
I feel like they would need to meet before race day. You know what I mean? They would need to meet the day before, or give them time, because he leaves them with the question, "What's the solution?" And all of them are like,
They're just like,
yeah. It says all of them met his question with dead silence, and they all just went in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And so if he wants them to work this out before the race in order to actually succeed, then he would need to bring them back together before race day. He would need to sit them down and be like, okay, what'd you come up with? How are we going to fix this? Are you going to get over yourself, or are we going to just throw this race completely? What's the point in showing up if you're not going to work together?
No, I agree with you.
I agree. I think we should have, he should have had should hold a meeting and kind of talk to him before race day. But then at the same time, I think he leaves the varsity team the same and he leaves the JV team the same, so that he can then turn and talk to him after the race and say, hey, we noticed we had these issues. We kind of brought it out. I asked you guys what the solution was. You didn't give me one. So you're a team. I'm going to treat you as a team. You're going to work as a team. And that obviously didn't work out on the water. So what can we do for the next batch? Or, what can we do for the next race? What can we do to resolve these issues now so that you can race better later?
Yeah. What solution did you come up with, and how are we going to do it?
Yeah. I don't think you punish the JV team because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
I would have to put the JV team in the race and don't let V team, if it's not resolved, or maybe just let him, like you said, let him race and be like, I don't know.
How's it feel to fail?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, guys. Like, you guys, the thing is that they're doing it to themselves, you
Yeah.
know? And it's one of those things where either they're going to get it together or they're not going to succeed, and it's on them, because at this point, what else can the coach do? Not much besides facilitate some kind of conversation. You can't force them to work together.
Right. So maybe that is the answer, since he at the end asked what the solution is and they all walked away. Maybe that was the solution, is they weren't going to be a team, so put the JV team in as the team.
Yeah.
That's a good point. They made their decision when they walked away.
Yeah. Interesting.
And technically, like military, that's probably what they would have done. They would have been, okay, you walked away. I don't care. I'll put somebody else. Because that's practically what they usually do. They don't really care.
You don't want to show up, there's someone else that will.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We talked about that. So what are the risks of the approach that we talked about? What are the risks of saying, well, you walked away, JV team is playing for you?
They might actually win.
Yeah,
Well,
JV team win.
JV might win.
They will probably feel resentment. Is that the right word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Towards the coach.
Oh, yeah. They'd be pissed.
Yeah.
I think they'd have resentment towards the coach, but they'd also have resentment towards each other. I think pissed off parents because their kids didn't get to play.
Well, and I think it's a college team, because I don't think they have, unless I'm wrong, high school team.
No, but yeah, they're older, obviously. They're not like high schoolers, because you have to be 18 to enlist anyway, but I mean, there's going to be people who are there to watch that are going to be mad,
That's true, yeah.
you know.
Where's my my player that I always
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they also are going to face, well, I put all this work in all year, whether or not they did well. They were there, they were at practice, they were working, and they're going to be upset. Like, I put in all this work for this, and you're just going to boot me?
Yeah, and that might actually like help them find a solution, because they're like, oh, they're gonna be like, wait, we did this because, we did this and now we're not competing. We really have to, like, I feel like they probably will want to fix it now, because
Right.
now they know what could
Right.
happen.
Not being able to do it.
Yep. Okay. Well, I actually have the resolution, so let me read it to you.
Oh, really?
So it says, Colonel P, coach of the Army crew at West Point a few years ago, faced a baffling problem. Through extensive testing, he had developed objective criteria to rank his rowers. That's hard to say. But the 8 best, his dream team, in the varsity boat, and the 8 others in the junior varsity boat. The problem, the JV beat the varsity 2/3 of the time. The situation, as explained in the Harvard Business School case, was that the varsity was full of resentment over who was contributing most, while the JV, feeling they had nothing to lose, supported one another happily. One day, Coach P lined up the varsity crew in 4 pairs. He told them they were to wrestle, no punching for 90 seconds. There were no clear winners. Each man was discovering that his opponent was just as strong and determined as he was. Coach P then had them change opponents and wrestle again. By the 3rd round, they were choosing their own opponents. One guy would point at another saying, "You," Coach P says. Finally, one of the rowers started laughing, and they all piled in a general brawl. Someone said, "Coach, can we row now?" From then on, the varsity boat flew. You probably can't order members of an executive team to wrestle, tempting though it may be, but bringing the tensions out in the open and then resolving them is one of the team's leader's most important job.
Of course. Boys are just going to fight it out.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So why do you think this response worked?
Because it proved to them that these guys that they thought were the slackers, or these guys that they thought weren't reaching their expectations, were really working just as hard as they were. And so these ideas that were clouding their judgment and clouding their ability to trust that person were dispelled, because that person was just as strong, that person was just as determined, that person was essentially their equal physically and determination wise. And so their whole reason for being untrusting was gone.
And I feel like the method that he used of like fighting, like they're probably at the end were like, what the heck are we fighting for? You know, like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're a team, why are we fighting against each other? That whole.
I think also it just like the idea of fighting and neither one really winning just instills a sense of respect between them. Like, okay, if most guys, if they try to beat some guy up and they don't win, they're like, all right, respect. I'll respect you. And that's exactly what they needed.
Yep. What can you learn from this approach that might apply to a team in a business setting? Obviously, this could work at a military school where the team members are trained in combat. Even then, someone could have been seriously harmed and Coach Pete could have been in serious trouble. I seem to think about approaches that might work in a business setting.
I think Sol actually touched on how we could have done that in a business setting when she was giving ideas for what Coach P could have done. She said, pair them off with the people that they have conflicts with and make them talk it out. That's basically what he did, just physically. Instead of using their words, they used their bodies. And so if they would have just said, okay, you got a problem with you, go over there and work it out. It would have been kind of the equivalent, but in a more professional way.
I have to say I've actually done this. I had 2 employees at one time that were at each other's throat and were constantly in my office. She said this and she said that and just back and forth. And I was tired of being the middleman. And so I actually brought them in the conference room and sat down and said, okay, you guys keep coming into me. You guys say it to each other. Let's work through this. Let's address the issue, get it off the table so we can all get back to work. And it actually, they were pissed off, but then me bringing them together was kind of very childlike in making them have to address the other. I didn't, like I would do to my kids, I'd make them sit on the couch and hold each other's hands.
Yeah.
But this way, just brought them in the conference room and said, okay, let's talk about this and address the issue. It then kind of became funny and they realized how silly and stupid it was that they were arguing. And so it made it better. Isioma says, in a business setting, you need to let the employees sort out their individual differences. And I agree to an extent, but I think sometimes it becomes so big that they start involving other employees and the whole atmosphere around. And so that you, like I did, bring them together and just say, okay, let's fix this now and end it now.
And maybe you could start individually like you did and then like put them together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Isioma says yes, through careful and professional mediation. That's correct. Okay, so last part of this, I'm going to ask each of you, what is the most important thing you learned from this case? So what's the most important thing you learned from this case?
I think it will be like addressing the issue as soon as you see there's an issue. Because if you let it slide, if you let it
fester,
yeah, it's just gonna get worse like it did with the varsity team.
Okay, Cassie?
I think what I learned is that the solution isn't always as obvious as you think it is. Like, I really didn't see them fighting it out as what the resolution was going to be. But if you understand who you're working with, you can come up with more creative ways to handle things that will be best for their needs.
I agree. Isioma, I'll wait for your response. Oh, they're good. Awesome. In our lives, families, and work, we could be great superstars on our own. I'm sure there's more to this. But we need to work with others. Yeah, I was gonna say that I think we need to look at the bigger picture. I've been on right, Isioma, in order to truly win. I've been on projects where we're working on a project and different people feel that different portions of the project are more important, and that's the step we need to be working on. And I think there's times that we need to be the leader and push through. But there's also times that we need to step back and go, you know what I think really isn't that big of a deal. It's not that big of an issue. I'm going to hold back my feelings and to not win this argument. I'll pick my battle a different way.
Yeah.
So I need you guys to rate the overall quality of the discussion from 0 to 10. 10 being the best. How do you think our discussion went today?
I think it was a 10. That was a good discussion.
Yeah, I think we all shared like our own perspectives. Like we didn't just say like one sentence. So I think you win right now.
So you think it was a 10?
Yeah, I think it was a 10.
Isioma says, I believe this was super excellent. So definitely, I agree. I think it was a 10. I think we all contributed a lot and had different thoughts, but again, each of those thoughts could have worked either way. I think that's part of the thing with this HR management. At least what I've seen in business is there's not always a right answer. There's different ways that you can handle a problem and still get a good resolution from it. I'm sorry, guys. Ask what you did as a discussion leader that they liked.
I like that you just took charge.
Yeah.
I like that you just took charge. Because I don't know if we assigned discussion leader, but you took care of it like it was nobody's business.
I agree. I agree with that.
I came actually prepared. That's really funny, Isioma. I'm not sure how prepared I was, but thank you.
Because I wasn't the best prepared either.
What could I do better next time?
I don't know.
I don't know. You did pretty great.
I could have read the whole article.
Yeah,
Oh,
me
there
too.
you go.
But now we know. Now we know that it's not just the doohickey.
Yeah, it's not just the doohickey, it's this case too.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much. Appreciate your feedback. So I'll write up the little report that we have to for this, or I guess that I have to for this since I was the leader. Who would like to be the leader next week?
Look.
Sol, are you volunteering?
Yeah, I can be the leader.
So Sol will be the leader next week. Do you know how to create a Zoom meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to do that and send it out for next week, that'd be great. I know, Isioma, this is not a good time for you. I don't know how to get a good time for you. Does this time work for everybody on Wednesday nights?
Works good for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording so we can talk about the doohickeys thing.